The Affordable Care Act hasn't completely fixed our long-broken healthcare system, but this law has made our healthcare system a lot better. A lot better. And yes, at times this reform has been contentious and confusing. And obviously it's had its share of critics. That's part of what change looks like in a democracy. Change is hard. Fixing what's broken is hard. Why are folks working so hard for people not to have health insurance? Why are they so mad about the idea of folks having health insurance? Many of the tall tales that have been told about this law have been debunked. There are still no death panels. Armageddon has not arrived. Instead, this law is helping millions of Americans. And in the coming years, it will help millions more.
That, of course, was President Obama talking about the big milestone that the Affordable Care Act reached this today. Now more than 7 million people have enrolled in the Affordable Care Act, which is a very welcome piece of news for the much beleaguered program. In this hour, we're going to discuss the Affordable Care Act. We're going to discuss the Democratic prospects in the 2014 midterm elections. We are also going to discuss Chris Christie. If there's some other political topic you'd like us to address on the round table, please give us a call, 888-6-LESLIE, or tweet us at Leslie Marshall. On our round table tonight, my good friend, Democratic media strategist Hank Sheinkopf. Hank, I've been in this business longer than I care to admit, and Hank is one of the brightest and most interesting people that I've met in the years I've been in this business. Also on the round table is our own executive producer, Mark Grimaldi. Hank, how you doing tonight?
Oh, I feel like a natural woman. Thank you for asking. No, I feel great. Life is a gas, and this healthcare plan. We'll probably disagree about the Affordable Care Act a lot, I would guess.
Okay. Well, okay. Let me ask you about the Affordable Care Act. Hit the 7 million milestone today. What is the impact of, if any, of that?
Well, I mean, the people that registered will be happy people, but the small business operators and those who believe in single-payer systems will not be happy people, and that's just the fact of life. You know, I think this is an atrocious. I think the whole process has been atrocious. I think single-payer is the only solution. I think that this shows a complete lack of moral suasion in government not to tell the truth. And this is a disgrace. I mean, what do we need unions for if you're going to co-opt the benefits that they fight to give, and you're going to tell them that their health care plans are Cadillac health care plans? I mean, what are we talking about here? And what about small business people who provide the jobs in this country, who are now going to have a mandate that most of them can't live with? You know, if anybody wonders why there's more banks on their blocks and in their malls than there are small business operators creating smaller jobs for people, then they have a pretty good answer if they look at this Health Care Act.
Well, let me follow up that, Hank. One of the things I've noticed in looking at the public attitudes towards the Affordable Care Act over the last few years is that if you look at right now, probably somewhere between 51 and 55% of the public say they oppose Obamacare. It's interesting, though, if you look at that, 51%, let's just say for the sake of argument, about a third of those people who oppose Obamacare are people who oppose Obamacare because they didn't think it went far enough and probably think single payer was the way to go.
I don't think it goes far enough, and I think it is a disgrace to give 1/6 of the economy to the insurance industry, which is what's going on here. I mean, it is a new form of corporatism to allow the insurance industry to control the means of production, the location of production, the producers, and all the ancillary impacts and products around that care. I mean, there are no death panels, but for sure, when insurance companies control things around them, they deal in actuarial tables, which means that hypothetically, if 30%, if that's not true, I apologize to people who support the insurance industry, but if 30% of every healthcare dollar is spent in the last 30 days of life, there won't be a last 30 days of life, because the actuarial tables will mandate, for profitability purposes, that the insurance industry make it the last 60 days, or the last 90 days, or the last 120 days of life, by ensuring that care is not available. And that violates the very nature of Western morality, the Judeo-Christian ethic, and what I think democratic practice is all about. It is very dangerous, and it does not go far enough, and it does empower the insurance industry. And we're going to pay a terrible price for this in our own, in the complete lack of our moral authority. It's not good.
Hank, let me ask you this. For our listeners who don't know what single-payer health care is, could you briefly describe it?
One place, one bill, one set of physicians or physicians in network, one method of payment, one set of a fee schedule. Okay, government control. Excuse me, that's not fair. Government regulation thereof. And it works. It's called Medicare. We have it. Give it to everybody. Okay. Stop lying to people and give them what they deserve.
Okay. Let's go to Mark. Mark, what do you make of the enrollment of 7 million Americans today? Is it something that will turn around public opinion towards Obamacare or not?
I think for first of all, it's nice speaking with you, Hank, and Brad as well.
Thank you.
I think Hank brings up an interesting point, is when you take a step back, because this has been going on so long, the healthcare law, and it's been in the news for so long, and we've, heard every single sort of argument, genuine and, disingenuous. I think it's easy to get bogged down in the very specifics of it. Not that those aren't important, but I think, what Hank is bringing up when you take a step back and you look at, when the president ran in 2008 and what he and Hillary Clinton were debating in the primaries was for universal health care. And then you look at how, through the opposition and through on the Republican side, but also there was quote-unquote blue dog Democrats that were slowing the process down. And the bill that actually passed was in the Senate, and you guys both know how it ended up, that became the law. But for a while, it was Congress that was looking to push kind of, I guess, an in-between of what we came up with now, the Affordable Care Act and single payer, that had at least a public option. But I think Hank brings up a good point, in which if that was the starting point, then they had already given up single payer, because that was never part of the discussion, or at least a serious part of this discussion. And I think that's really unfortunate, because even if you're not a proponent of single payer, I think if that was, a starting point for the two sides to come together, you would have ended up with a better end product than what we have now. That said, I do think that the numbers are encouraging, and a lot of people all along said that this would happen, that people would sign up late, especially young people. And speaking to the criticisms that a lot on the right have said, they're very invested in this failing, because they've already took such a stand against it that they would never admit that they were wrong. So in that sense, I'm encouraged to see that the numbers are where they're at compared to where we thought they were going to be a few weeks ago. As far as how it's going to affect the elections, I do think some voters, who maybe are on the fence, are going to take a step back and say, well, wait a minute, if this is such a bad thing and nobody wants it, then why are all these people signing up for it? And, all the people who have been telling me they were never going to get to this number, well, it happened. So maybe they take a second look at this. And also, I think once people actually have health insurance and are able to get access to health care, that they didn't have before, the people who do have a good experience of it, I think are going to have different opinions on it. So I do think it'll have somewhat of an effect. I'm just not sure, how big it will be in some of these red states that you've talked about, where a lot of the Senate races are running, Brad. So I think it remains to be seen. But for the Democrats, this has got to be a good sign.
Okay, we have a caller on the line, and who wants to talk about the Affordable Care Act. So let's go to him right now, and that would be Joe in Michigan. Joe, how you doing tonight?
Hi, I'm doing good. How are you all doing?
Just fine. You want to say something about the Affordable Care Act?
Well, yeah. How it'll affect the election depends on whether we can get the truth reported in the mainstream media and them asking the real questions. 7 million raises more questions than it answers. They claimed they needed 7 million newly insured people. Of course, they'll deny that and change their tune again and say the 7 million, quote, enrollees, end quote, are what they were going for. But we have no idea how many of those are Medicare and Medicaid people who would have signed up completely regardless of whether Obamacare would have been passed or not. We have absolutely no clue how many of those people are reinsureds of the 6.5 million across the country who have lost their health plans because of Obamacare. How many out of any of those are even paid? Bob Beckel on the 5 today claimed from an expert 85% of that 7 million will indeed pay their policies. Okay, if we accept that, that's fine. 85% of that 7 million would be true then. And beyond that, the insurance industries claim a 30% annual dropout of newly enrolled within the first 3-4 months of policies.
Okay. Let me make a couple of comments, Joe. First of all, you're right. We don't know a lot about the numbers. We do know they are not people who are currently on Medicare. We also know that some of the people, we don't know how many, did have health insurance plans, but now have better and less expensive health care plans because of the Affordable Care Act.
Those wonderful substandard plans. So once again, Democrats are telling people, you were stupid having a plan that you bought and paid for a decade, going to the doctor you wanted, the hospitals you wanted. You were too stupid to know those weren't good enough for you.
Well, the reality is, Joe, that millions of Americans do get better insurance plans for less money under the Affordable Care Act. And isn't that important that Americans have more options and can get a health care insurance plan without paying through the nose for it?
I have no doubt that there are perhaps 1 million people, perhaps even 2 million, that are getting a cheaper subsidized policy, but at the cost of hundreds of billions of dollars, $2 trillion over the next 10 years, wasted away everybody who was on.
Well, let me stop you there, Joe. The nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office said, and it's a nonpartisan agency just controlled by the House Speaker, John Boehner, and the Democratic Senate Majority Leader, Harry Reid. CBO did a study on the Affordable Care Act, and it said that over the next 10 years, it will bring the deficit down by billions of dollars.
How, when it originally was supposed to cost $900 billion, they now say, CBO says it'll cost around 1.8, and it won't even be close to that because the $800 billion they are going to cut from Medicare.
Okay, Joe, we're going to break now. If you want to hang on, feel free, and we'll pick you up after the messages. Anyway, we're going to break now. This is hour 3 of the Leslie Marshall Show, our political roundtable with Mark Grimaldi and Hank Sheinkopf.
You're killing me now.
Keep Leslie in your pocket. Go to lesliemarshallshow.com/members.
This is Brad Bannon, back with more of hour 3 of the Leslie Marshall Show. In this hour, we're, as usual when I'm on the show, we're doing a political roundtable. And joining us on the roundtable tonight our Democratic media strategist, Hank Sheinkopf, and also our own executive producer, Mark Grimaldi. Before we went to break, we heard Joe talk about the Affordable Care Act. What I'd like to do now is go to Hank, then Mark, and then back to Joe. Hank, do you have anything to say to Joe?
No. Costs are one thing, but, look, let's be real. If we look at our healthcare system and the amount of waste that goes on and the duplication and the rest of it, and we look at systems throughout the world, and I'm not talking about Britain or Canada, there's a lot of other places that you don't have to complain about, where it works and where people get health care. I think it's the mark of a civilized society that we have a healthcare system that does not disinclude large portions of the population. Now, what I'm interested in is the electoral nature of what occurs here. And my betting, Brad, is if you look at the House, there is absolutely it would be an extraordinary event akin to Mars and Saturn meeting someplace in the cosmos, and without collision, that the Democrats would take back the House. My betting on the Senate is that it's going to be very tight. It will be either very tight or will be a disaster for the Democrats. This has a lot to do with Obamacare and the misinterpretation of it in some cases, and the alarmist nature of some of the propaganda that people in my business have created. But it also has to do, frankly, with the economy that is immobile, except for the select few. That the income gap has increased dramatically, not declined. And the third factor, frankly, is the sense that the world is out of control. Now, if we look at previous public opinion studies, significant ones, what we find is that foreign affairs per se are not the issue in campaigns, but rather the sense that things are campaign outcomes, but rather the sense that things are out of control, which is what Americans seem to be experiencing. And those three factors together could provide some very difficult times for the Democrats, I think, long term. That's a serious problem they face.
Mark, you want to comment on Joe's comments, and then we'll go back to Joe?
Yeah, first of all, thank you for calling, Joe. We appreciate everybody's opinions here on the show. And I guess I did want to ask Joe a question because I've heard his opinion on the Affordable Care Act. And I've got two questions for him. The first is, was Joe more happy with our healthcare system before the Affordable Care Act? And secondly, before the Affordable Care Act was installed, what are some improvements that he would have liked to have been made? Because, a lot of people had been saying we need to fix our healthcare system. And as Hank correctly brought up, we spend the most on healthcare, yet we have, I think it was something ranked like 37th out of all the nations in the world as far as quality of care. So, Joe, go ahead.
Joe?
Oh, yeah, I'd love to answer the questions, but I still want to challenge the deficit issue as if Democrats all of a sudden...
Well, let's answer the questions first and then go back to the deficit issue.
Okay, sure, no problem. Republicans have had plans. I liked it before, yes. We could have improved it, yes. Michigan itself outlawed pre-existing conditions. Every state could have done that on their own. Why didn't the liberals in control of their states do that? We need cross-state competition, health savings accounts. We could have even compromised with liberals and had some subsidizing for the ultra-poor.
Well,
would have come nowhere near the costs that Obamacare are.
Let me ask you a question, Joe. If the Republicans in the House of Representatives want to, they could pass an alternative to Obamacare tomorrow, because the Republicans have total control of the House of Representatives. But the Republican leadership has not even we've been arguing about ACA now for at least 4 years, and the Republican leadership in the House, and they've controlled the House since 2010, has never introduced its own health care alternative. Why do you think they haven't?
Like every other jobs bill that then goes to the Senate and goes nowhere? Why bother?
Yeah, but you got to have an idea somehow. I mean, otherwise, what are they getting paid for?
The plans are out there. We've been stating.
Wait. There are lots of plans out there, Joe, but the Republican leadership has never allowed a vote. The Republican leadership has never allowed a vote on any alternative to the Affordable Care Act. And don't you think the Republicans would have a better argument if they came up with their own plan?
We do have our own plans.
Well,
Yes,
let me put the question this way, Joe. Don't you think the Republicans would be on stronger ground if they passed their own health care alternative in the House of Representatives, which they could do tomorrow without breaking a sweat?
This is how it works. Dodge and deflect from the actual issue now in the fuzzy math they're using.
Well, what about the Republicans? Don't the Republicans have a responsibility?
How many people have paid?
Wait. Don't the Republicans have a responsibility to pass?
Excuse me. You like. I answered your question. Answer mine. How many people have paid?
We don't know that yet.
You just refused to answer.
I don't know the answer, Joe. Joe, I don't
know
the
Hold
answer.
on. Are we going to debate Medicare too, and how many people have paid for that? Is that what's next? Does the premiums for Medicare actually cover it? Why are we talking only about ACA and not about the cost of health care overall? This is not about partisanship. This is about, ultimately, what kind of society are we going to be? And what have we done to small businesses to force them to pay additional premiums and others to cover the cost of what we think ACA will cost, and they've gotten away with murder through this administration. I think that both Democrats and Republicans are at fault here, and that this is just bad non-public value public policy, which is a very, very dangerous route to be on.
I think one of the problems is, too, I mean, you have a perfect example here where, Hank is talking about some things that, he dislikes about the Affordable Care Act. Joe is talking about some things that he dislikes, but there's plenty of people, and Hank is coming from the left and Joe is coming from the right. A lot of the times in the past, people would say, okay, screw where we're coming from. We both agree on this. Let's improve it. But that's not happening right now. And Brad brings that up, which is, you have some Democrats who want to be more aggressive and control some of these costs and say, let's come up with an alternative. And you have Republicans who actually want to do that too, but they will not meet in the middle. And I think that's indicative of why you've seen so many problems and such a lack of progress is you just saw a perfect example of it where, people, and I'm not accusing just Brad and Joe because I've done it plenty of times myself. We get crossed up and we're both asking each other questions and not answering them. When if we really take a step back and we say, okay, what do we really care about, which is what Hank is saying, which is how will we forget partisanship? How can we actually get these costs down? And if, Joe, you're serious about the state exchanges and you're serious about people not being denied due to pre-existing conditions, then I think you should pressure your leaders to come up with a plan so that if the Republicans take the Senate in 2014, they don't then have to waste X amount of time saying, well, we didn't know that we were going to win the Senate, so we didn't write the plan back then. I mean, I think that's a bit disingenuous, don't you?
You think all of a sudden now we're going to get cooperation when Republican ideas were completely shut out of the Affordable Care Act?
Joe, the point is you can either I'm not how do you govern, Joe? If you don't have all three branches of government, you say screw it and you throw your hands up in the air? That's asinine.
Well,
the only way this is going to be rectified is when a new president is elected in 2016.
So you think Hillary Clinton's going to get rid of ACA, Joe?
Hillary Clinton will not be president of the United States.
Oh, okay.
All right, well, thank you for your call, Joe.